Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are covering the slow, silent Armageddon of climate change. And a bit of breaking news. There was looks like a large fire broke out in Northern California, the Northern California town of Paradise. Mass devastation as fire destroys at least 1,000 structures in Northern California town of Paradise. This is from updated at 6:24 minutes ago, 6:20 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. In what officials described as mass devastation, at least 1,000 structures were lost Thursday when a fire swept through the Northern California town of Paradise, forcing residents to run for their lives. The Butte County fire exploded from 10 acres to more than 10,000 acres in a matter of hours, taking direct aim at a town of 27,000 known as a popular retirement community. It has destroyed the town, said Scott McLean, a CAL FIRE spokesman. As people raced to safety, roads became choked with traffic, forcing some to flee on foot as the fire engulfed nearby homes and buildings. One hospital was evacuated as patients were taken to nearby medical facilities, and parts of its campus were damaged by the flames. Named the Camp Fire because it began near Camp Creek Road in Butte County, the blaze was first reported around 6:30 a.m. According to a spokesman with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, by midday, the fire had burned 18,000 acres and smoke had blanketed the town in darkness. It's been a nighttime for the last 6 hours. The smoke has come down so low and so heavy, McLean said. At a Red Cross shelter in Oroville, 2 women described their harrowing escape from the burning mobile home park in Paradise soon after the trauma hit Patsy Jacobs, 62, and she began to sob. All right, so that is happening. We're going to keep an eye on that. Of course, there was a mass shooting today in California in Ventura County, which is not very far from me, and some of my family is up in Ventura. I'm not going to read too much about this because I'm sure, this has been all over the news today. But it appears to be this crime appears to be committed by a veteran who was having some mental problems or some kind of emotional breakdown. And again, we're not getting enough help for veterans. If we're going to send people into war, let's at least give them the help that they deserve. I'll link this article below if you all want to read about it, but I'm sure you all have already heard it. I'm going to move on to this story, which is one moment. Where did this story go? Excuse me. I have 3,000 tabs open, so I'm and a lot of them are open to the same story. So that's a problem. So this, in conjunction with all the tree deaths that I'm seeing in my area, a lot of tree deaths that people are reporting all over the world. People watch this channel from every continent, and I have a lot of people reporting the same things that I'm seeing. This is more confirmation that the trees are not in good shape. Swaths of Amazonian rainforest dying as trees fail to keep up with climate change. Drought is killing parts of forest and new growth not emerging fast enough to replace them, study finds. This is from The Independent, and this is from 20 hours ago. We'll call that yesterday. Increased temperatures and droughts are taking their toll on the Amazon as trees are unable to adapt to the changing climate. A study has found researchers examining decades of growth in parts of the rainforest found that global warming was linked to a changing tree composition, but as some tree species died, not enough were springing up to replace them. As global temperatures rise, there will be inevitably some losers that are not suited to the new conditions, but there will also be winners. Species that are better adapted to living in dry conditions may do better, for example, while moisture-loving trees are likely to vanish. Based on their analysis, team leader Dr. Adrian Esquivel Mulbert said the Amazon's response is lagging behind the rate of climate change. The data showed that the droughts that hit the Amazon basin in the last decades had serious consequences for the makeup of the forest, with higher mortality in tree species, but most vulnerable to droughts and not enough compensatory growth in species better equipped to survive drier conditions. The Amazon rainforest is one of the most important ecosystems on the planet, accounting for 45% of all tropical forests and storing 40% of all carbon held in land vegetation. I'm going to link that below, and I am going to move on to an article by George Monbiot. I'm going to hope to read this whole thing. I don't know how long it is. Maybe I will save it. Hold on one second. He wrote an article about David Attenborough, who does documentaries for BBC Film, the Blue Planet series. Come on back, George Monbiot. Let me see. David Attenborough has betrayed the living world he loves. By downplaying our environmental crisis, the presenter's BBC films have generated complacency, confusion, and ignorance. This is from yesterday, November 7th. Knowingly creating a false impression of the world, this is a serious matter. It is more serious still when the BBC does it, and yet worse when the presenter is the most trusted man in Britain. But as his latest interview with The Observer reveals, David Attenborough sticks to his line that fully representing environmental issues is a turn-off. His new series, Dynasties, will mention the pressures affecting wildlife, but Attenborough makes clear that it will play them down. To do otherwise, he suggests, would be proselytizing and alarmist. His series will be a great relief from the political landscape which otherwise dominates our thoughts. In light of the astonishing rate of collapse of the animal populations he features, alongside most of the rest of the world's living systems, and when broadcasting as a whole has disgracefully failed to represent such truths, I don't think such escapism is appropriate or justifiable. It is not proselytizing or alarmist to tell us the raw truth about what is happening to the world. However much it might discomfort us, nor do I believe that revealing the marvels of nature automatically translates into environmental action, as the executive producer of Dynasties claims. I've come to believe it can have the opposite effect. For many years, wildlife filmmaking has presented a pristine living world. It has created an impression of security and abundance. This is very true, even in places afflicted by cascading ecological collapse. The cameras reassure us that there are vast tracts of wilderness in which wildlife continues to thrive. They cultivate complacency, not action. So yeah, how about somebody do a documentary? I mean, there's plenty of, there's lots of channels, good channels doing extreme weather videos, but it would be great to see some documentaries about maybe devastated wildlife and focusing on that. That would be really awesome. You cannot do such a thing passively. Wildlife filmmakers I know tell me that the effort to portray what looks like an untouched ecosystem becomes harder every year. They have to choose their camera angles ever more carefully to exclude the evidence of destruction. Of course they do. Travel further to find the Edens they depict. They know, and many feel deeply uncomfortable about it, and that they are telling a false story, creating a fairy tale world that persuades us all as well in the midst of an existential crisis. While many people Thanks in large part to David Attenborough, are now quite well informed about wildlife, we remain astonishingly ignorant about what is happening to it. What makes Attenborough's comments particularly odd is that they come just a year after the final episode of his Blue Planet 2 series triggered a massive effort to reduce plastic pollution. Though the program made a complete dog's breakfast of the issue, the response demonstrated a vast public appetite for information about the environmental crisis and an urgent desire to act on it. Since 1985, when I worked in the department that has made most of its programs, I have pressed the BBC to reveal environmental realities, often with dismal results. In 1995, I spent several months with the producer developing a novel and imaginative proposal for an environmental series. The producer returned from his meeting with the channel controller in a state of shock. He just looked at the title and asked, "Is this environment?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I've spent 2 years trying to get environment off this fucking channel. Why the fuck are you bringing me environment?" Wow. I later discovered that this response was typical. The controllers weren't indifferent. They were actively hostile. If you ask me whether the BBC or ExxonMobil has done more to frustrate environmental action in this country, I would say the BBC. We all knew that only one person had the power to break this dam. For decades, David Attenborough, a former channel controller, widely seen as the living embodiment of the BBC, has been able to make any program he wants. So where, we kept asking, was he? At last, in 2000, he presented an environmental series, State of the Planet. It was an interesting and watchable series, but it left us with nowhere to go and nothing to do. Only in the last few seconds of the final episode was there a hint that structural forces might be at play. Real success can only come if there's a change in our societies, in our economics, and in our politics. But what change? What economics? What politics? He had given us no clues. To make matters worse, it was sandwiched between further programs of his about the wonders of nature, which created a strong impression of robust planetary health. He might have been describing two different worlds. 6 years later, he made another environmental series, The Truth About Climate Change. And this, in my view, was a total disaster. It told us nothing about the driving forces behind climate breakdown. The only mention of fossil fuel companies was as part of the solution. The people who extract fossil fuels like oil and gas have now come up with a way to put carbon dioxide back underground. Apart from the general we, the only distinct force identified as responsible was the 1.3 billion Chinese. That a large proportion of Chinese emissions are caused by manufacturing goods the West buys was not mentioned. The series immediately triggered a new form of climate denial. I was bombarded with people telling me there was no point in taking action in Britain because the Chinese were killing the planet. If Attenborough's environmentalism has a coherent theme, it is shifting the blame from powerful forces on to either society in general or the poor or the weak. Sometimes it becomes pretty dark. In 2013, he told the Telegraph, "What are all these famines in Ethiopia? What are they about? They're about too many people for too little land. We say, get the United Nations to send them bags of flour. That's barmy." Barmy, you say. There had not been a famine in Ethiopia for 28 years, and the last one was caused not by an absolute food shortage, but by civil war and government policies. His suggestion that food relief is counterproductive suggests he has read nothing on the subject since Thomas Malthus's essay in 1798. But cruel and ignorant as these comments were, they were more or less cost-free. By contrast, you do not remain a national treasure by upsetting powerful vested interests. Look at the flack the outspoken wildlife and environmental presenter Chris Packham attracts for standing up to the hunting lobby. I have always been entranced by Attenborough's wildlife programs, but astonished by his consistent failure to mount a coherent, truthful, and effective defense of the living world he loves. His revelation of the wonders of nature has been a great public service, but withholding the knowledge we need to defend it is, I believe, a grave disservice. Good article by George Monbiot. As usual, I'm going to link this below. That is all I have for this video. I'm going to come back with another video and read a Darja Mail article from a few days ago. I believe it was from last week. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.